Bible in a Year Live, Chronological Project, Week 34, Day 2, Amplified Bible. A chamber with its doorway was by the side pillars of the gates. There the burnt offering was to be washed. In the portico of the gate were 2 tables on each side, on which to slaughter the burnt offering, the sin offering, and the guilt offering. On the outer side, as one went up to the gateway toward the north, were 2 tables, and on the other side of the porch of the gates were 2 tables. 4 tables were on each side next to the gate. A total of 8 tables on which they slaughtered sacrifices. Moreover, there were 4 tables of hewn stone ashlar for the burnt offering, 1.5 cubits long, 1.5 cubits wide, and 1.5 cubits high, on which they lay instruments with which they slaughter the burnt offering and the sacrifice. The double hooks, 1 hand width in length, were installed in the house all around. The meat of the offering was to be placed on the tables. From the outside to the inner gate were chambers for the singers in the inner courtyard, one of which was beside the north gate, with its front toward the south, and one beside the south gate facing toward the north. He who was guiding me said to me, "This is the chamber which faces towards the south. It is for the priests who have the responsibility and take care of the temple. But a chamber which faces toward the north is for the priests who have the responsibility and take care of the altar. These are the sons of Zadok, who alone from the sons of Levi come near to the Lord to minister to him." He measured the courtyard, 100 cubits long and 100 cubits wide, a perfect square, and the altar was in front of the temple. Then he brought me to the porch of the temple, and he measured each side pillar of the porch, 5 cubits on each side, and the width of the gate was 3 cubits on each side. The length of the porch was 20 cubits, and the width 11 cubits, and at the stairway by which it was ascended, there were 2 columns beside the side pillars, 1 on each side of the entrance. The inner temple. Then he, the angel, brought me to the nave, outer sanctuary, and measured the side pillars. 6 cubits wide on each side was the width of the side pillar. The width of the entrance was 10 cubits, and the sides of the entrance were 5 cubits on each side. And he measured its length 40 cubits, and its width 20 cubits. Then he went inside the inner sanctuary, and measured each side pillar of the doorway 2 cubits, and the doorway 6 cubits high, and the width of the doorway 7 cubits. He measured the length of the interior of the inner sanctuary 20 cubits, and the width 20 cubits, opposite the nave outer sanctuary. And he said to me, "This is the most high place." Then he measured the wall of the temple, 6 cubits thick to accommodate side chambers. The width of every side chamber 4 cubits, all around the temple on every side. The side chambers were 3 stories high, one above another, and 30 chambers in each story. And the side chambers extended to the wall which stood on their inward side all around, so that they would be attached, but not attached to the wall of the temple itself. The side chambers became wider at each successive level as they encompassed the temple. Because the structure surrounding the temple went higher by stages on all sides of the temple, for that reason the width of the temple increased as it went higher. And thus one went up from the lowest story to the highest one by way of the second story. I also saw that the temple house had a raised platform all around it. The foundation of the side chambers measured a full rod of 6 long cubits in height. The thickness of the outer wall of the side chambers was 5 cubits. The free space between the side chambers belonging to the temple and the outer chambers was a width of 20 cubits all around the temple on every side. The doorways of the side chambers toward the free space were 1 doorway toward the north and another doorway toward the south, and the width of the free space was 5 cubits all around. The building that was in front of the separate area of the side toward the west was 70 cubits wide, and the wall of the building was 5 cubits thick all around, and its length was 90 cubits. Then he measured the temple, 100 cubits long. The separate area and the building with its walls were also 100 cubits long. Also, the width of the front of the temple and the separate areas along the east side totaled 100 cubits. He, the angel, measured the length of the building along the front of the separate area behind it, with a gallery on each side, 100 cubits. He also measured the inner sanctuary and the porticoes of the courtyard. The thresholds, the latticed windows, and the galleries all around their 3 stories, opposite the threshold, were panelled with wood all around, and from the ground to the windows, but the windows were covered. Over the entrance and to the inner room, and on the outside, and on all the wall all around, inside and outside, by measurement. It was carved with figures of cherubim and palm trees, so that a palm decoration was between cherub, and every cherub had 2 faces, so that the face of a man was toward the palm decoration on the one side, and the face of a young lion toward the palm decoration on the other side. It was carved this way on the entire house temple all around. From the floor to the space above the entrance, cherubim and palm decorations were carved, and also on the wall of the nave, the holy place. The doorposts of the nave were square. As for the front of the sanctuary, the appearance of a doorpost was like that of the other. The altar was of wood, 3 cubits high and 2 cubits long, and its corners, its base, and its sides were wood. And he said to me, "This is the table that is before the Lord." The nave, holy place, and the sanctuary, holy of holies, each had a double door. Each of the doors had 2 leaves, 2 swinging folding leaves, 2 leaves for the one door and 2 leaves for the other. And there were carved on them, on the doors of the nave, cherubim and palm decorations, like those carved on the walls. And there was a threshold of wood on the front of the porch outside. There were latticed windows and palm decorations on one side and on the other, on the sides of the porch. Thus were the side chambers and the thresholds of the house. Chambers of the temple. Then he, the angel, brought me out into the outer courtyard toward the north, and he led me to the attached chamber, which was opposite the separate area and opposite the building of the north. Along the length, 100 cubits, was the north door, and the width was 50 cubits. Opposite the 20 cubits, which belonged to the inner courtyard, and opposite the pavement, which belonged to the outer courtyard, was gallery, balcony, corresponding to gallery in 3 stories. In front of the attached chambers was an inner walkway 10 cubits wide and 100 cubits long, and their entrances were on the north. Now, the upper chambers were smaller because the galleries took away more space from them than from the chambers on the lower and middle stories of the building. For they were in 3 stories and did not have pillars like the pillars of the outer courtyards. Therefore, the upper chambers were set back from the ground more than the lower and the middle ones. And the outer wall by the side of the chambers toward the outer courtyard facing the chambers was 50 cubits long. For the length of the chambers which were in the outer courtyard was 50 cubits, while the length of those facing the temple was 100 cubits. Below these chambers was the entrance on the east side, as one enters them from the outer courtyard. In the width of the wall of the courtyard towards the east, facing the separate area and facing the building, were chambers, and a passage in front of them was like the appearance of the attached chambers on the north, and they had the same length and width, and all their exits were like both their arrangements and their entrances. And like the entrances of the chambers that were toward the south, there was an entrance at the head of the walkway in front of the dividing wall toward the east, as one enters them. Then he, the angel, said to me, "The north chambers and the south chambers, which are opposite the separate area, are the holy chambers, where the priests who are close to the Lord shall eat the most holy offerings. There they shall place the most holy things, the grain offerings, the sin offering, and the guilt offering, for the place is holy. When the priests enter the holy place, they shall not go out from the sanctuary into the outer court, unless they lay their garments in which they minister, for these are holy, set apart. They shall put on other garments before they approach that which is for the people." Now, when he had finished measuring the inner temple, he brought me out toward the gates which faced east, and measured the outer area all around. He measured the east side with the measuring rod, 500 rods by the measuring rod. He measured the north side, 500 rods by the measuring rod. He measured the south side, 500 rods by the measuring rod. He turned about to the west side and measured 500 rods by the measuring rod. He measured it on the four sides. It had a wall all around, the length 500 and the width 500, to make a separation between that which was holy, the temple proper, and that which was common, the outer area. Vision of the glory of God filling the temple. Then he, the angel, led me to the gate that faces toward the east. And behold, the glory and brilliance of the God of Israel was coming from the way of the east. And his voice was like the sound of many waters, and the earth shone with his glory. And it was like the appearance of the vision which I saw, like the vision I saw when he came to destroy the city. And the visions were like the vision I saw beside the river Shebar near Babylon. And I fell face downward. The glory and brilliance of the Lord entered the temple by way of the gate facing toward the east. Then the Spirit lifted me up and brought me into the inner courtyard, and behold, the glory and brilliance of the Lord filled the temple. And I heard one speaking to me from the temple, while a man was standing beside me. And he, the Lord, said to me, Son of man, this is the place of my throne, and the place of the soles of my feet, where I will dwell in the midst of the sons, descendants of Israel forever. And the house of Israel will not again defile my holy name, neither they nor their kings, by their idolatrous prostitution, and by the corpses and monuments of their kings in their graves, by setting their threshold by my threshold, and their doorpost by my doorpost, with only the wall between me and them. They have defiled and desecrated my holy name by the vile atrocities which they have committed. So I have consumed them in my anger. Now let them put far away from me their idolatrous prostitution, and the corpses and monuments of their kings, and I will dwell in their midst forever. As for you, son of man, describe the temple to the house of Israel, so that they will be ashamed of their sins, and let them measure its plans in detail. If they are ashamed of all that they have done, make known to them the design of the temple house, its layouts, its exits, its entrances, all its designs, all its statutes, and all its laws, and write it down in their sight, so that they may keep its whole design and all its statutes and do them. This is the law of the temple. Its entire area, all around on the top of the mountain, Mount Moriah, shall be most holy. Behold, this is the law of the temple. The altar of sacrifice. And these are the measurements of the altar of burnt offering in cubits, the cubits being a long cubit, the length of a forearm, and a hand width. The base shall be a cubit long and a cubit wide, with its border on its edge all around it of a span in width. And this shall be the height of the base of the altar. From the base on the ground to the lower ledge shall be 2 cubits, and the width 1 cubit. And from the smaller ledge to the larger ledge shall be 4 cubits, and the width 1 cubit. The altar hearth shall be 4 cubits high, and from the altar hearth shall extend upwards 4 horns, one from each corner, each 1 cubit high. Now the altar hearth shall be 12 cubits long by 12 wide, square in its 4 sides. The ledge shall be 14 cubits long by 14 wide on its 4 sides, and the border around it shall be half a cubit, and its base shall be a cubit all around, and its steps shall face the east. The offerings. And he, the Lord, said to me, Son of man, thus says the Lord God, these are the statutes and regulations for the use of the altar on the day that it is built, to offer burnt offerings on it and to sprinkle blood on it. You shall give to the priests, the Levites who are from the descendants of Zadok, who are close to me to minister to me, says the Lord God, a young bull for a sin offering as a memorial to Christ's sacrifice. And you shall take some of its blood and put it on the 4 horns of the altar of burnt offering, and on the 4 corners of the ledge, and on the border all around. Thus you shall cleanse it from sin, and make atonement for it. You shall also take the bull for the sin offering, and it shall be burned in the appointed place of the temple outside the sanctuary. On the 2nd day you shall offer a male goat without blemish for a sin offering, and they shall cleanse the altar as they cleanse it with a bull. When you have finished cleansing it, you shall offer a young bull without blemish, and a ram from the flock without blemish. You shall present them before the Lord, and the priest shall throw salt on them, and they shall offer them up as a burnt offering to the Lord. For 7 days you shall prepare daily a goat for a sin offering, Also, a young bull and a ram from the flock without blemish shall be prepared. For 7 days they shall make atonement for the altar and purify it. So the priest shall consecrate it to receive offerings. When they have completed these days, on the 8th day and from then onward, the priest shall offer your burnt offerings on the altar and your peace offerings, and I will accept you, says the Lord God.